Good evening, everybody. This is Cinnamon Noir.
And this is the Ramen Shaman.
Welcome back to Alwa's Awakening. In the last episode, you may recall, we got the upgraded version of the block. Which, fairly simple upgrade, just lets it float on the water, but has some pretty complicated implications, actually. In this episode, we will be going through the Stone Cellar, which we just saw briefly before. You can see how far down it goes. And we will be getting the upgrade to the bubble. Which I'll just spoil right now, because really, in terms of mechanics, it's not that special. It just means that it will go up forever. Instead of breaking apart after a couple of seconds, it'll just be permanent. And I spoil that because what's really interesting in this game is how they use your mechanical upgrades, not so much what they are. So in this first part, we fall all the way down, and that is a one-way trip for now. It's just like the last one we saw, where there's really no way out until you get the upgrade. It kind of locks you in and forces you to get it. Now this is a very tricky puzzle, probably one of the most difficult in the game. You need to use a complicated setup of blocks and bubbles. Or at least that's what I thought when I first played through this. Actually, that is strictly impossible. And I have ultimately worked that out. What you need to do is get a completely different item.
Wondering about that.
What threw me off is that there are puzzles in this game where you're expected to do that are almost that complicated. That is really just tips slightly over the point where it is impossible. So just like how the Cecellum depths were right beneath the Amber Cecellum, the Stone Cellar connects with the Shrine of Sea Monk in several areas. The big difference here is that it connects at multiple different points, and you can just sort of go back and forth between the two. The Cecellum Depths was really just a lower version of the Amber Cecellum. It didn't keep, going back and forth between the two. So this is a confusing room. So you need to get that key somehow in order to unlock the door in the other room. We saw earlier that going out the right side of the room just takes you to the Shrine of Sea Monk, which is not progress. So what are you supposed to do? Well, I don't know if you recall earlier that those spikes sometimes are fake. But this whole room is designed to teach you that that is in fact what they are. That you don't have any choice but to fall into them. But it takes me a little while to figure that out, actually. Maybe it'd been a while since I last played and I was a little slow in the uptake.
I can kind of imagine... That seems like kind of a nasty puzzle. Now, if you dropped a block, would it fall through the spikes?
Yes, it would. It would be a nastier puzzle if the game hadn't already established that this sometimes happens. And also, since it literally gives you no other way to get out, if you even tried to kill yourself just to start over, you would go on the spikes anyway. So it is leading you there, indirectly.
True.
It's not perfect, but I don't think it's entirely cheap.
But I can still see it driving someone absolutely nuts.
Briefly, yes. And the hell of it is, I'd played this game before when I did this, so there's no excuse for me.
Well.
Although, now that I think about it, yeah, this was a bad idea. I don't know why I'm trying to do this backwards. I could have just gone up on top. This does mean that I skipped the jump, which might have thrown me into those spikes, but... I don't know. I actually didn't even remember doing that until I saw it just now. So here's a weird thing. By placing that block there, I accidentally discovered a secret passage. I was trying to block off the statue, so it wouldn't hurt me like it just did.
Yeah, and then you...
What I actually found out is that's a little bonus area. You can skip right into this area.
And then fall to your death and drown.
Yeah, exactly. It's very convenient, because I do that instead of dying in the other room. Actually, that would have been quicker, so I don't know what I'm talking about. But luckily for me, I have the special, what I call Let's Play sheet enabled for this game, where you don't respawn at the last save point, but in the same room.
Yeah, that's kind of saved your ass a lot, hasn't it?
That is correct. The developers have a little message saying, hey, we put this in for convenience, but it's not really the way the game's meant to be played. And I appreciated that. The first playthrough I didn't use it. But this is a Let's Play, and I think different mechanics are required.
Yeah.
I don't want to waste anybody's time, any more than I already do by just playing this.
Especially not your own.
That's true. Yes, my time's very valuable. You can tell because I play games like this.
Yes, your time spent playing video games and occasionally making commentary with me about them when I'm not too lazy to do that.
Yes, exactly. Isn't it wonderful to live in the modern age? Anyway, so this room, there's really not much to it. I don't know if that going through... No, I'm mistaken. That always goes through walls. I thought for a minute it might have been an artificial wall, but... Or a fake wall. What am I saying? Artificial wall. No, anyway, however, there is a fake wall to the left, because there are fake walls all over this place. I think I said earlier this is one of my favorite dungeons, and that's the reason, because I like how these sort of play around with your brain.
Oh.
You know, this game has a few similarities with Metroid, and Metroid is also known for doing that, although apparently it pisses some people off a lot. They go, why do I have to bomb every block in this room just to find the way forward?
I can see that.
I would understand it if they were correct, if it was literally every block, but it's not. There's usually noticeable differences, like in this game.
I've heard a lot of people don't like Metroid because it has elements of that.
Yes. No, Metroid is what I hear people complaining about. Although really, if you're going to pick on a game series, why not pick on one that's come out with like a dozen games, rather than one that's had like 4? Surely other games have had more time for their mechanics to become annoying. Speaking of annoying, we have another instance of probably the most annoying enemy of in this entire game. I hate these guys. I may, you know, on a good day, reluctantly concede their utility in making certain rooms more challenging, but I really wish they'd found another way. I've never liked enemies like this in games. They're actually a lot like the Zoras from the original Legend of Zelda, and I always hated them too. They just pop out of the middle of nowhere, shoot a really fast projectile at you, and then leave. Anyway, getting back to this game. So, the Stone Cellar is centered around 3 gems that you need to destroy to get rid of barriers blocking off the upgrade. I don't know if you noticed it earlier, but we were right below the area where the upgrade was, and there were those 3 little barriers. In order to get the gems, you have to go into each of these 3 little doors, each of which has its own little subsection to get to, and then the gauntlet inside the door. It's a very intricate design for this game, actually. There's no other level like this in the game. One nice thing about a short game like this is that you can do lots of weird little different things with each dungeon.
That platforming puzzle with the blades going around those boxes just looks horrible.
It's, it can be a little tricky, but it's a little easier than it looks, actually. I know that sounds strange, but... Another thing is that these guys don't kill you. They just take away a point of health, so...
Still.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So, one helpful thing to realize here is that there's actually another fake wall in the middle of the room, so you can get back and forth between it.
That would help, yeah.
There's those 3 barriers I mentioned earlier. Somehow we got rid of the middle one first, which is a little odd because it's the first one you can get access to. Anyway, the second of the 3 is over in this area, right next to a save room, which we need very badly. Although, of course, the game gives me a gratuitous heart right beforehand. Because it gives me hearts when I don't need them. That's the philosophy of this game. So this room... This room can be kind of a confusing puzzle. You cannot use your bubble, because I don't know if you noticed there's that blue fish. So what you need to do is you need to set things up so that you can just jump from place to place, and you need to push this block onto that platform in such a way that it'll fall onto the left green block. Because then you can use your generated one to get the one on the right-hand side. Moving platforms in this game are a little tricky in terms of momentum. You may have noticed I was pushing against that block for a long time, and it just wasn't moving. And then all of a sudden it started moving. Very curious. Yep, more curious things. I was pretty annoyed when that happened, because this is actually kind of a difficult puzzle. But luckily, I also forgot about the bubble thing. Luckily, once you press those switches, they're pressed for good. There's no such thing as having to do this puzzle multiple times. Now, this is an interesting room. I'm not exactly sure how you get that, even after having finished the whole game. But I'm pretty sure you can't get over to that waterfall on the right-hand side, which is galling, because most waterfalls in this game have hidden doors that you can get to. So, you know, you want to get behind that waterfall. It feels like you should be able to.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is just an annoying room. Basically a guaranteed hit from one of these guys. You are a very good Alwa's Awakening player indeed if these guys don't get you once.
Mm-hmm.
Here's just a silly little room with some fake walls. You can see which ones are real by the fact that these guys bump into them. But we are heading to that waterfall. I initially thought there was a door behind this part of the waterfall, but there is not. It's up on top.
Suspected something like that as well, but oh well.
Go figure. Anyway, the first time I played this, I actually had never gone behind a waterfall before, and I did not get at all that you were supposed to hold up behind it. I thought maybe it would just automatically transfer you into the room, or there was some other trick. So this part was a huge pain in the ass, because I hadn't figured that out. This is one of the more difficult sections in here, I would say. You need to be kind of careful to avoid damage. And then, just sheer frustration. These things are obstacles in your way, so it slows you down so this thing can hit you. And really, there's like no space to maneuver in here, which is the annoying part. So if it sends one off at kind of a diagonal slant through the tunnel, there's absolutely no way of avoiding it. You have to kite him in order to get around this. Or you can always block it with the block, but you know. That requires foresight, and I don't have much of that. Now I'm bragging about having defeated it, which is really kind of foolish. That'll come back to bite me.
Oh well.
I just like the little dance Alwa does when you press down. It's like, I remember doing that in Shovel Knight too. I think Shovel Knight had kind of a fun animation for that.
Aw.
It's one of the things I like about sprite-based games, is that you can have that sort of appearance. Whereas in 3D games, the movements always look a lot more natural. So it's hard to be silly with them. I mean, I've seen this happen a lot. Like, one of my favorite Game Grumps playthroughs way back in the day, with John and Aaron, they would hold up on the controller to make them sort of go back and forth, and it looked like they were talking. Actually, Danny and Aaron did that too, with... I forget exactly what game it was. I think it was Kirby's Epic Yarn they did that in. And it worked very well. God, that was a silly playthrough.
I can imagine.
That's the one where they opened one of the videos with Aaron asking Danny to make a wish, and Danny wished that all the Jews would go away.
Oh, God.
And, of course, he's Jewish, so Aaron acted like he disappeared right afterward.
Okay, then.
It was a dumb video, but, you know, that's their style of humor.
I guess that's the kind of joke you can get away with if you are Jewish.
Oh, are you kidding? You remember Sai. Listeners at home, Sai was a friend of ours from college. Sai was also Jewish, and she once made a joke to me that compared the Holocaust to cooking pizza.
I remember the...
You were trying to stop me from getting to the end of that, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
It didn't work. Didn't work, did it?
Yep. Anyway.
So, at first that room looks impossible because there's no way to push the block from the right, but like so many things in this dungeon, it's actually a hidden wall. You know, I kind of thought I'd have more to say about this dungeon than I ended up having. A little disappointing. Oh well.
Yeah.
Still, we're almost at the end. This was the third and last of the blocks, and so soon we're going to get that bubble upgrade. You can get back up through there, I think, but there's really not much point. You should just take the little hidden wall exit. I don't know what I was doing there. It should have occurred to me that at some point I'm going to have to use the bubble. It is easy to trick yourself with that bubble early on because it got such a short time limit, which is why it's such a godsend when you finally get this upgrade and you don't have to worry about it.
It really is little more than like a double jump.
That is essentially what it is, and they're pretty clever about doing that. But once you have the upgraded block and bubble, that's pretty much the last major upgrade you get in the game, and it does completely change the way platforming works. The way they sort of knit these two upgrades together is very interesting. There's no upgrade for the thunder and the lightning, as you might expect, since it's just an offensive weapon.
Oh!
Anyway,
clever.
I am celebrating this upgrade by squishing Zoe's head against the ceiling. Fortunately, nothing untoward happens as a result of that.
Oh, and that lets you ascend.
Mm-hmm. So now we can finally get out of here. Although, one thing you have to be careful of is that you shouldn't do that.
Weird.
Because if you jump, your sprite will be left... the sprite of the bubble will be left behind. You basically have to travel with it into the new room in order to keep it with you. Sorry, what did you say?
The physics of that is a little odd.
It's not so much physics as it is scene transition. It's the way sprite memory is preserved, and I don't know if you've noticed, but we've already seen a few examples of that being wonky in this game. Not that it's glitchy, but it's just the way it was programmed leads to this. I guess what I'm saying is it's not so much a flaw in the programming. Oh, sorry, I should say. It's not that the programming isn't working, it's that this is a basic flaw of the game's mechanics.
But it doesn't have parallax scrolling?
No, this game does not have parallax scrolling. Although, to be fair, the era of games it's based on, games did not have parallax scrolling.
No.
More so than Shovel Knight, this is based on 8-bit games, I would say. And it's very tightly focused on that.
Shovel Knight always seemed more like an evocation of 8-bit games.
Whereas this, I would honestly say this is an 8-bit game.
Creation.
I mean, there's almost nothing in this that could not have been rendered on the NES eventually. I don't know if you've ever seen Metroid or the original Zelda, but they're kind of similar to this.
Yeah, in fairness to Shovel Knight, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with the way its particular approach to,
not remotely,
old school platform games.
No, not at all. What people might forget is that Shovel Knight is not supposed to be a port or a modern version of that kind of game. It's its own thing. No. The aesthetics are used for the game. They're not the core of what's at the game. Shovel Knight would actually work perfectly well as a 3D styled game. Like, you know how Mega Man, they had the old-fashioned 2D Mega Man games, and then they had things like Mega Man Powered Up, where there's this sort of 3D aesthetic, but it's still 2D structure. And the games work just fine. I think Shovel Knight's exactly the same thing. If everything was a little faux 3D model, it would still play exactly the same. There'd be nothing wrong with it. Whereas this game, there's no reason to imagine this with a different art style than what it has. One thing you have to get used to with the block and bubble puzzles is jumping out into the middle of the gap in order to place the first block. Because there's lots of cases where there'll be a spike right in front of you, so you can't push it into the water. You basically have to summon it in midair and let it drop. Near the end of the game, we'll start seeing some absolutely crazy examples of that. Oh, speaking of things that are kind of like glitches, there's one that I run into a lot here. When you are on the block and you attack something that's on land, like right after the thing lands on the left-hand side of the screen, as you saw, it won't hit the enemy. It's like you're on a different platform from it. It's very confusing. So you need to literally jump off the block in order to hit the enemy at that point.
That's weird.
It is weird. And honestly, a lot harder to defend because, I tried to say that the traveling between screens thing wasn't a glitch, but that feels much more like a glitch. So there's that guy lurking in the shadows again just to unnerve you. I really thought the first time I played this that guy would have some kind of effect, but it's just a graphical thing apparently.
Yeah, that he'd come out at you?
Yeah, I mean, it seems kind of obvious, right? I grew up on Zelda games and Mario games where that's what would happen.
Oh yeah, where it would, jump out at you.
Like, do you remember Banjo-Kazooie? You played that game?
I've never actually played Banjo-Kazooie.
Oh, really? Jeez. Earlier today we found out you didn't play Majora's Mask, now no Banjo-Kazooie.
Nope.
It's like you didn't even have a childhood. But, no, in Banjo-Kazooie there are, sewer grates that these creepy little amphibian monsters come out of. And you get a warning before they come out. There's, a roar. Anyway, it's kind of interesting.
Oh, I see.
So, for some reason I tried to do this again.
Oh, yeah, I was like, is the bubble gonna help you somehow?
No, it is. The bubble is how you get out of here, but you need to not be wasting time on this. I'll just spoil this. What you ultimately do in that room is there's a thing that lets you see invisible platforms. And there are some invisible platforms in this room. that let you move forward.
Oh.
I also had this vague idea that maybe you approach from the left.
I was wondering how you intended to use the floating bubble to solve this.
No,
So
you can't.
Like, that...
In fact, the game gives you fair warning that it can't because these spikes are so low to the ground. Like they were in another thing earlier.
Yeah.
So I actually get pretty far. I get halfway across the room. I do think if you do it pixel perfect, there may be a way to manage this. It would be nearly impossible, but you could do it. Of course, your reward for that, then, would be to have to go back across the other direction.
Yeah.
Which, I wouldn't wish on anybody.
No. Although, would you die... If you died on the way back, where would you end up?
Well, unfortunately, I have assist on, so I would end up in the same room, probably outside the same door.
Oh, God.
Although... it's a little weird. If we're talking about glitches. I wish I hadn't said that this game has no glitches, because I just thought of another one. I don't know if you remember in the last video, when I died inside one of those rooms, it spawned me outside the door.
Uh-huh.
And I fell through a ladder, because the door is right underneath one.
Ah, yeah.
That's really weird. That's probably the weirdest, like, glitchiest thing that does happen in this game. Anyway, we are finally out of the Stone Cellar. With our new upgrade. And I'm just... The last little bit of this will be demonstrating what we need to do to get... Ooh. To get to the Amethyst Passage, which is going to lead us to the... Basically the final upgrade-based dungeon of this game. It's also going to lead us to the last of the 4 Protectors. Who also, coincidentally, is the hardest one, but that's to come. Anyway, I headed back into the Shrine of Sea Monk just briefly in order to heal up and head out to Gloom Lake. I could have fallen all the way back down and used the warp, because just like with the Sicellum Depths, one thing this game does that is a little bit helpful is that even though you can't get out like regularly from those places until you get the upgrade, if you happen to want to leave early, you can use the warp. Basically, you can't finish the dungeon without the upgrade, but you can sort of peace out early if you want to.
That makes more sense.
So we see that destructible block again, and I really have no idea why it is there. We saw it the first time I went through the Shrine of Sea Monk. It has no obvious purpose. It's confusing. Almost everything in this game is used for something. But that one destructible block, it means absolutely nothing. As far as I can tell. Who knows, there may be something weird here. Anyway, this was a little section of the Shrine of Sea Monk that we saw only a little bit of the first time that we came through here. Yeah, what we need to get that is go in the other side. Just like everything else in this, it's fake walls. So this is a totally new area. And actually, funnily enough, so unlike the Sicellum Depths, which was just underneath the Amber Sicellum, the Stone Cellar completely surrounds the Shrine of Sea Monk on 3 sides.
Huh.
It kind of envelops it. Which is a little strange, because it is called a cellar. But, you know, that kind of implies, like, fairly horizontal and underneath stuff.
Yeah.
But, you know, go figure. Anyway, this is a fairly big bonus area, with save room and some orbs to collect and stuff like that. There's no particular reason for me to be collecting orbs at this point, because I've already gotten the penultimate upgrade, pretty much. And the last one requires all 99. Which is such a pain in the ass that I wouldn't recommend it for anybody. But coming in here does mean that I can open up that shortcut. Very important for an obsessive like me. Maybe I'm overstating it. My family was always a little more perfectionist than me. They always wanted to 100% everything. Especially my older sister and my dad.
Oh, God.
When they played Donkey Kong 64, that was horrible because that's a game that it's like crack for completionists. There's so much stuff to collect in that game.
I've never gotten 100% completionism. Although I've actually, I get it with achievement hunting. I've actually tried that, although there's usually some achievement that makes me quit.
I hate a lot of achievements. Almost every game has an achievement that I hate.
Yes.
I go by the rule of Reggie, personally. If it's not fun, why bother?
Actually, going back to Dark Souls, there's one specific achievement. Get every weapon in the game.
Oh.
I went through, like, I think I got to New Game Plus 2.
Yeah.
I get, like, all the special weapons. The one weapon I didn't have.
It's like a stick.
It has, like, an absurdly low drop rate. There's maybe 6 enemies in the game that can drop it, 3 of which don't respawn.
Yeah. By the way, if you're wondering why
I gave up.
If you're wondering why I spent some time just staring in that last room is really mean. So, it has that little section of spikes in the middle, which makes you think you need to ride a bubble up right through the middle, which would require perfect placement. But then, of course, you see that there's a blue fish head there, so you can't use the bubble anyway. So the actual answer is that there's a fake wall. Like so much other stuff in this. I feel for you on that, like, rare drop thing, because I used to play lots of Castlevania games. Well, actually, I still do. And there are some ridiculous rare drops in Castlevania. I spent a lot of time in Symphony of the Night trying to get the Chrysogrim from the... Part of it is just I love the characters. There's one part of the game called the what is it called? The Forgotten Library. Which is full of weird, like, fairy tale monsters. And one of them is called the Shmoo, named after a character from Little Abner. And they drop the Chrysogrim, which is such a broken weapon, it's unbelievable. But it's such a rare drop rate that you really shouldn't try for it. There's a weapon like that in Earthbound 2 called the Sword of Kings, which has something like a 1 in 256 drop rate. It's crazy.
I wonder if they chose that number on purpose.
Could be. You mean, like, because it's a video game thing?
Yeah, that it's a binary number.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, back to this game. So you might notice I just rescued that guy. He says he's going to help us, now that we've rescued him from the forces of darkness. As far as I can tell, he provides absolutely no help at all. What happens is that he shows up before the next 2 bosses and tells you things that you would see as soon as you got into the room. Basically, he's useless. I forgive him for it, because he looks kind of cool. He's got that horn helmet, but really, I mean, he could have been of more help. Like, maybe if he did the same things that guy from Hollow Knight does. Like, helps you fight that jellyfish, you know. But he doesn't. Though, to be fair, this game already has a system whereby getting the orbs makes fights easier, so it'd be a little silly for that to stack on top of it. But, I mean, they decided to put that guy in there. It's their fault that he's useless. So anyway, one nice thing about the Shrine of Sea Monk is having gone through the Stone Cellar and gotten the upgrade we need, we are now in Gloom Lake above Shrine of Sea Monk, which is right next to the Amethyst Passage. So we'll be heading there right now. Basically, we just need to get to the edge of Central Alwa. We saw that area earlier. It has this kind of weird purple water that you can't get past until you have the upgraded block. And everything in it is just green, like blindingly green. Little silly for something called the Amethyst Passage, but I mean, they use purple in it too. Honestly, I would have preferred Emerald Passage, because that would remind me of the Emerald City from Wizard of Oz. You know, as long as I'm off on a tangent, which I always am. Have you ever read the original Wizard of Oz book?
A long time ago.
So the original had a really weird thing about it. When they went into the Emerald City, they had to put on glasses that had a little lock at the back so you couldn't take them off. And the glasses are basically green, so they make everything look emerald. So it's basically like everything else involved with the wizard. It's all a trick. It's not an Emerald City. It's just a normal city.
Yeah, and they're, like, really surprised about that.
Right, because Dorothy's a girl. She's just a little kid. She doesn't... Boy, that sounded really sexist for a minute. Dorothy's...
Yeah, I was like, whoa, where are you
Dorothy's a little girl, is what I meant to say. She doesn't understand that she's being tricked. Because what they tell her is...
That is true. She's like 10 years old.
What they tell the characters is, the Emerald City is so blindingly bright that we have to put these glasses on you in order to, you know, make it duller, or else it'll hurt you.
I think our
it's just so silly.
companions get less of a pass on that. They're just kind of chumps.
They are, in one case, wild animals, in another case, a mannequin, but I know what you mean.
True.
Anyway, that's all for this episode. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.